Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to my channel. So you guys, today is a really fun video that I've been wanting to do for months and finally have the time to do. And that is basically my May TBR, because we're in the month of May, period. Today is Cinco de Mayo and it's Chris Brown's birthday, so what's a better day to do this video? Come on now. And I want to talk about all the books I read in 2022 to 2023. I think in total I read about 25 books. 95% of those are series, so I'm gonna try to go really quick through them so I don't really like make this video super long. But yeah, thank you guys again for tuning into my video, and if you're a book lover, this is definitely the video for you, so stay tuned y'all. It's gonna be a good video for sure. Alright you guys, so before we get into all the books I read in 2022 through 2023, we're gonna start off first with my May TBR list. I have a lot of books on this list. I'm not sure I'm gonna get through all of this in May, but wishful thinking. But up first we have the Ravenhood series. So if you actually watched my first vlog, you know I said I was reading this series. That was a truth and a lie. The reason why it was the truth is because I really was reading it. As you can see, I have a bookmark in there. But it was a lie because I literally stopped reading this at the beginning of April because I had a reading slump and I was really focused on YouTube and I just stopped reading for a minute. But I thought, why not put this back on my list as things I want to read in May? Because I know I can read all three books. I read series longer than this before, so I know I'm capable of it. I don't know much about this series because one of my bad habits is I don't read the back of books. I kind of just go off of like recommendations, or if I like the cover, or if it's romance, I'm always gonna grab it up if I like the vibe it's giving. So I don't really read the back of the book. So truthfully, I don't know a lot about this series, but what I can say for the first book, which is Flock, because I read a couple of pages of it, is basically about a girl who has two parents and they're divorced, right? Her dad is a rich man. He lives in a place called Triple Falls, I think, and he owns a warehouse in this community that basically employs everybody in the community. And she has to go live with him for a summer in order to get her inheritance. And then she goes through a whirlwind through that summer. Like, she meets so much different people, she meets different guys, and I guess like this story kind of like follows her along that journey of her living there. That's what I can, like, you know, educated guess of what this storyline is going to be about. But from reading Flock, I think that's the direction that it's going in. A lot of people on TikTok said they cried from this series and stuff like that. I'm trying to get some tears in my life, so I'm looking forward to reading the Ravenhood series. I actually was gifted this book, so that's why I really want to read it, for the simple fact that it was gifted to me. But second, I saw this on TikTok. Everybody said this book literally had them crying. And I need to cry, y'all. Crying is a form of expression. You need some tears in your life to survive. I'm telling you right now. In this day and age, emotion is the only way that's gonna get you through. So yeah, I heard this was a really good book. It's called If He Had Been With Me. I love the cover. It's getting very much drama. It's getting very much heartbroken, you know? And then this book is about Autumn and Finn used to be irresistible, but then something changed, or they changed. Now they do their best to ignore each other. Autumn has her boyfriend Jamie and her close-knit friends group. Finn's become that boy at school that everyone wants to be around. That still doesn't stop the way Autumn feels every time she and Finn crosses paths. And the growing nagging thought that maybe things could have been different, maybe they should have been together. And time passes, Autumn realizes she might not get another chance to make things right before it's too late. So it's giving very much journey. It's giving very much I want you but I can't have you. It's giving much our life has decided to go in two different directions and I don't know if we're gonna have another chance at this love. I think this is gonna make me cry. It's giving drama. I'm ready for this one, for sure. Next up we have Love in Other Words. Honestly, this has been on my shelf for months, longer than February, probably since like last year. That's how long it's been on my shelf. The reason I haven't read this though, because Christina Lauren also wrote a book called The Unhoneymooners, and I do not like that book. It's literally on my DF list. Like, didn't finish it, period. I tried to read it digitally, didn't work. I tried to get the paperback and read it. It was even worse. I don't know what it's about that book. I just don't enjoy it. But I heard a lot of good things about this book and I'm looking forward to reading it. I think it's about two neighbors and how they come together, you know, relationship, love, you know, books. But yeah, I'm interested in reading this book. I think it's gonna be a pretty good one. Last but not least, the last set of books on my May TBR is the Dreamland Series by Lauren Asher. Now, y'all, I know I'm late to the game, but this has been sitting on my shelf since February, and I'm just now getting into reading the first book. Don't come for me. Okay, at least it was on my shelf. I got taste in books, y'all. I got taste. But this book is actually pretty good. I'm almost done with it. Literally, that's all I have left, like that little piece down there. But this book was a little slow for me. I gave it a 4 out of 5, spice level about 2 out of 5. But the Dreamland series basically follows 3 brothers, Rowan, Declan, and Callahan. Basically, their grandfather owned this big amusement park called Dreamland. It's a Disney dude. It's a Disney dude. When you read it, you know it's a Disney dude. But he basically owns Dreamland, and their grandfather ended up dying, and he left them a will, basically giving them instructions on how they can get their inheritance. And they have to do these steps. They have to do this challenge in order to get their inheritance. For instance, for Rowan, he has 6 months to come up with a creative idea in order to get his inheritance. He meets this girl named Zahara, who's basically an employee at Dreamland, but she aspires to be a creator, which is the people who makes the rides and the characters and everything. And this follows the life of how their relationship was about, how Rowan engages with her, how Rowan gets to basically completing the challenge to get his inheritance, because he needs it. He wants his brothers and him to rule Dreamland. He wants them to be able to take over the company, and the only way they can do that is to complete the challenge that his grandfather gave to him in his will. So that's the first one. It's about Rowan. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk more about this once I finish it, because I got about, I think, 5 chapters or 6 chapters left. But it's pretty good. The next one, everybody rips and raves about terms and conditions. This one, it follows the life of Declan and Iris. So Declan's challenge is he has to get a wife and he has to get her impregnated in order to get his inheritance of the company. So I think this one's gonna be a little more funny because, or a little more interesting because of the situation that he's placed in. I really want to see how it goes, like, you know, how everything flows, and like how he ends up, who he ends up picking, and like why, and like how that process goes. I think this is gonna be a really good book. And then last but not least, we have The Final Offer, which follows the last brother, who his name is Callahan. And his mission or like challenge within the will, I think, is to rekindle a relationship with like an old fling or something like that. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that. I haven't heard much about him in the first book. Hopefully I get more about him in the second book so I can understand what the third book is going to be about. But yeah, like I said, it's pretty good. I like the series so far. I'm not in love with it, but I do like it. I think when I get to the second book, I'm going to start falling in love with it for sure. But yeah, that is my May TBR. That's everything I'm looking forward to reading this May. 9 times out of 10, some of those books are gonna trickle over into June just because I know me and I'm probably not gonna finish all of them, but I'm gonna do my best to finish them, and I'll come back to y'all with an update once I do. But now we're gonna get into all the books I read in 2022 to 2023 and basically telling you the different series that I read and what was good, what was bad. So yeah, that's what we're about to get into. All right, y'all, so this is gonna be a little unconventional. So if you see me looking down a lot, it's gonna be because I'm looking at my Goodreads. Every book that I'm about to talk about, I already reviewed it on my Goodreads, so I can kind of read off my review and kind of expand on it for y'all. But the first set of books I'm gonna talk about is the Devil's Night series. It's one of the longest series I've ever read. And honestly, a lot of people have their opinions about it, but I think this series is really good. And as you can see, this is the Devil's Night series. It's a lot of books, y'all. Let me turn it around. And this is it in order. And don't mind the tape on the book Nightfall. When I got it on Amazon, it was damaged. This is the Devil's Night series. I can't, bro, I can't. It's a 6-part series with 2 novellas. All books are interconnected, and truthfully, you have to read it from first all the way to last to really get the holistic view of the entire series. But this series was crazy, y'all. I loved every single second of it, like, for real. Before I even get into each single one, y'all don't even know what the series is about. So, the Devil's Night series is basically follows the life of 4 boys in high school. They call them the 4 horsemen. They're all rich and they live in this town, and basically they rule this town every Halloween. Even on a regular day, they're considered superior and above the law. But there was one situation that happened that ended up sending each and every individual one of these boys to prison for a couple years, and when they got out, all they were seeking revenge. And these books kind of follow how all this revenge and all these secrets and everything came about. Overall, you're gonna start off hating some characters, loving some characters at the end. It was a very like trippy kind of book to read. Honestly, throw your morals out the window when you read this book. That's all I have to say. Just throw all your morals out the window. Be very open-minded. What's accepted in books are not accepted in reality. We understand that. It's very dark. It's dark romance. It's a lot of drama. It's a lot of triggering things in these books, so I highly suggest do not read this book because that's a lot of trigger warnings. I don't want you guys to get, you know, affected by that. But overall, the books were really good to me. And now I'm gonna explain each book and like kind of give you an idea of what they're all about without giving any spoilers. So first up, we have Corrupt. So Corrupt was based on the life of Michael and Erica. I didn't honestly love this book. It was my least favorite out of the entire series because even though it was the beginning of their story and like the whole group story, in a way, I just felt like this book was hard to get through because their really interesting part didn't really start until like chapter 20. And it's like halfway through the book, but I think it's necessary to read because it helps you understand the other books. So, but yeah, everybody has mixed feelings about Corrupt, but it's still a great book nonetheless. I think I give this book like a 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. Hideaway. So Hideaway was based on two characters named Kai and Banks. So Kai is one of the horsemen. Michael is one of the horsemen as well. And Erica was just a love interest within the book. And Banks is also another love interest, but she has her own storyline. Erica has her own storyline as well. Honestly, this book focused more on Banks' past than it did Kai's. Like, I thought I was gonna learn a lot about Kai in Hideaway, but I learned more about Banks, which is not bad because Banks' story is really, really interesting. If you're really into learning more about her, you're gonna love this book. And yeah, and I love how patient Kai was throughout this book. He was very understanding, very patient. And out of all the boys, I feel like he was the least problematic. Honestly, I don't even think he would have got into a situation like going to prison or anything like that if he wasn't really involved with with his friends. He probably would have never gone to prison. Like, he's one of those people that you would have just been like, is this a mistake? But he was really interesting, and this book was overall a great book. I think I rated this book a 4 out of 5. It was very necessary to read this book as well because it gave you an idea of Kai's past and why he did what he did to end up in prison, and it gives you a little bit more information on the other characters because each book is like you're itching to learn more about each character and why they are the way they are, why they think the way they do, why they do the things that they do. And Hideaway was a good way to get more information on said characters. So next up, we have Kill Switch. Now, for those who read the Devil Knight series, everybody hates Damon. He's the third horseman. Everybody hates Damon. They think Damon is literally the devil dressed in human skin. Like, he was like the scum of the scum when you read the first book and the second book. But when you finally got to his book, we started to have sympathy for Damon. We started to understand Damon because Damon was a very complex guy. You feel me? But in this one, what I wrote about it was, I said I legit hated Damon the entire series up until this book. I finally got a chance to understand why all his actions were the way it was, and the reason behind everything, it just started to make sense. Although his actions were questionable and his upbringing was questionable as well, so it played a part in what he believed was just and unjust. So it's hard to hate him after reading this. And Winter, who was the love interest in this book, on the other hand, is so precious. Like, I love Winter and her ability to overcome her obstacles in the shorthand that she has been dealt in her life. And seeing Damon so loving and patient with her throughout this book goes to show that he's not a monster we all thought he was. Damon really did a switcheroo in Kill Switch. Like, we saw how patient this other side of Damon no one thought he could even possess. You kind of started to understand his story, and basically what we thought was wrong to him was right because of such reason. And you kind of understand why he moves the way he moves because his upbringing was terrible. Like, literally had me in tears reading this book, for real. Then next up after Kill Switch, we have Conclave. So this is a novella. It's basically like, I guess I'll call it like an intermission between like this and the next bigger book in the series because it kind of gives you some information that's lacking from the first 3 books that's necessary to understand the 4th book. And my review on Conclave was, so in Conclave, this one was a little interesting because there's a lot of drama in this, and but Rika and which is Erica and Michael's scene in here was super spicy, and if you know, you know. Scene in this thing was crazy. I'm like, they getting down like that? Like, whoa. But yeah, like, they went crazy in this book, and this is an interesting, detailed oriented piece to the series that's necessary to read to kind of understand where Nightfall, which is the 4th book, is actually going. Then we have Nightfall, and as you can see, every time I give you a different book, the pages get longer. But Nightfall was actually super, bro. When I tell you, this was my favorite book of the whole series. If I can give this a 5.5 stars, I will. I love Will Grayson. That was the 4th horseman I love Will, and I'll tell you why. So the reason I rated this book a 5 out of 5 was this book was my favorite out of the entire series, hands down. 5 out of 5. Will Grayson's character is my favorite. He was always the most interesting to me throughout all the books as a side character. He still felt like the main character, even though it wasn't his book. Like in all the other books I just showed y'all, Will made his presence known in each one of those books. He didn't feel like a side character to me like all the other characters did when the book wasn't dedicated to them. Will just has an aura I could feel through the book that just keeps me captivated to him. And when I finally got a chance to read his book, I was just really impressed not only with his perseverance, determination, and tenacity, but his ability to forgive, and is so much greater than his friends. It just makes him a better character overall. I stand with Will Grayson to the end of time, period. Will was just an interesting guy overall. Like his banter was amazing. His ability to just be present in every book was amazing. I think he was the best character out of all of them in Devil's Night. And his storyline was actually, besides Damon, his storyline was the most interesting storyline because you wouldn't expect him to be in that type of situation. And also the epilogue, I think, in this book was so good. You just got to see more of the characters on a deeper level in Will's book because they all had to work together at Will's expense. I just love Nightfall, my favorite book out of the entire series. And last but not least, we have, I just hit myself in the face, god damn. Last but not least, we have Fire Night. So this is basically another novella, but this follows the life of every single person in the book. The children, it's just an extended epilogue. It follows the life of all the characters in the books, like I think 10 years later. So when they have children or whatever you may have, and it follows the life of their kids. So we get a little bit more in depth about their kids. And I really wish Penelope Douglas can make an extended series based off Fire Night, but she told us like it will probably take her years to develop a series, and it's just not worth it in the end because there's so many children, so there's so many books that have to be made. And I understand where she's coming from. But this would have been a great segue for another series. It was so good. I believe I rate this like a 5 out of 5. But yeah, Devil's Night series, hands down one of the best series I've ever read. Those books put me in a reading slump for at least 2 months because I was like, I couldn't even fathom reading another book that wasn't as good as that. You feel what I'm trying to say? Like 100% the greatest series I ever read. All right, y'all, so next up we got the Knockemount series, Things We Never Got Over and Things We Hide from the Light. The Knockemount series is based off 2 brothers. One of them is named Knox and one of them is named Nash. And they both got their each separate books. So Knox's book, it basically follows him. It's more, the trope is like Grumpy Sunshine, in a way kind of forced proximity. And basically Knox Morgan, he's like a pillar in his community. Everybody knows him. He's someone that owns a lot of businesses in this community and things of that nature. And then you have Naomi, who literally came into the Knockemount like town in search for her sister, and all hell broke loose. And that's her twin sister. And when Knox meets her, he's like put off because he thinks that she's her twin, who's her evil twin, basically, because her twin sucks. Like if you read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Her twin is an ass. But yeah, so they meet each other and it just takes off from there. There's a lot of good moments, but there's a lot of bad moments. Knox is super stubborn, but it does have a happy ending, and you appreciate the ending more because of who Knox was in the beginning of the book. But I could read some of the back so you guys can kind of understand like a little bit more about the book. Knox Morgan doesn't tolerate drama, especially in the form of a stranded runaway bride. Naomi Witt is on the run, not just from her fiance and a church full of well-wishers, but from her entire life. Although if you ask her, Naomi's riding the rescue of her estranged hot mess of a twin Tina to Knockemount, a rough around the edges town where disputes are settled the old-fashioned way with fists and beer. Usually in that order. Too bad for Naomi, her evil twin hasn't changed at all, and after helping herself to Naomi's car and cash, Tina leaves behind something unexpected, the niece Naomi didn't know even existed. Now she's a guardian to 11-year-old going on 30 with no car, no money, and 0 plans. There's a reason this bearded bad boy barber doesn't get involved with high maintenance women, especially not type A romantic ones. But since Naomi's life and pulled her right in front of him, the least Knox can do is help her out of a jam. Like, come on, Knox. The least you could do, you know? And just as soon as she stops getting into trouble, he can leave her alone and get back to his quiet, solitary life. At least that was the plan. It's a great book. Honestly, I didn't have a lot of expectations for the book, and me reading the back of the book, that's actually my first time reading the back of the book. I don't read the back of books, period. I really don't. I just get the book and I just have an open mind going into it. If I love it, I love it. And if I hate it, I hate it. That's kind of how I go about reading. But this was a really good book. I always recommend this because I like small town romances. How can you go wrong with that? It's like I'm living vicariously through them. I always wanted to live in a small town, and that's why I really love this book. So Things We Never Got Over. That's the first book in the Knockemount series. And then the second book is Things We Hide from the Light. So this follows Nash Morgan, which is Knox's younger brother. And basically what happens is, in this story, Nash is recovering from being shot during a traffic stop gone wrong. And he's battling with mental health, trying to pull himself out of the darkness, depression, and trying to continue every day normally like he would have before getting shot. But he just feels like he's putting on a facade. It's just weighing down on him. And he meets a girl named Angelina, but they call her Lena for short. She came into town. She's actually friends with his older brother, Knox. He's doing a job that's in secret. She can't tell anybody about it for real. But she notices that Nash is struggling and she wants to help him in any way that she can. She ends up being that light for him. And it kind of shows that journey between the two and how they both come together. And I think it's a really good book. It does a lot with mental health. And I feel like a lot of people don't talk about mental health in books a lot, and I prioritize mental health. So seeing that in this book and seeing how a man that used to be so strong mentally, physically, and emotionally literally only is healing physically but not in any other form, it really like pulled on my heartstrings, and I just wanted him to have a happy ending, and this book gave exactly what I was looking for. So shout out to Lucy Score, you did it again. You know what we about to get into? Every single Colleen Hoover book that I read. So fun fact, I was in a reading slump since high school all the way till I graduated from college. So I say that's about 8 years. I didn't read for 8 years. Then I scrolled past Book Talk, and this was the rave. It Ends With Us was the rave. Everybody's like, Colleen Hoover this, Colleen Hoover that. I was like, let me get some Colleen in my life. So I started off with It Ends With Us, and this was a very interesting book. It followed a girl named Lily. And basically she's married, but there's a lot of domestic violence going on in that relationship. She also grew up in a domestic violence household. So, you know, history kind of repeated itself in her life. And the whole book is her trying to get out of that situation and find a better life, not only for her, but for her unborn and then born child. It follows like her relationship that she built with a homeless boy around the same age as her named Atlas. She was younger and she ends up meeting him again as an adult. And just that whole process of that. So it's kind of like a love triangle in a way. So it kind of follows her life through domestic violence and things of that nature. If assault, domestic violence, stuff like that triggers you, this is not the book for you. It's a lot of that in here. I saw something on TikTok where they said like, it's not marketed the way that the book actually is. But I'm telling you here now, there's a lot of domestic violence triggers in this book. It gets really dark. But it was worth the read, I would say that. And it's an easy read. The reason why a lot of people like Colleen Hoover so much, her books are so easy to get through, so easy to read, especially if you're getting back into reading. This is definitely someone you should start with because the words are so easy to go through. Like, you're literally going like this through the book. I think I finished this in a day. That's how easy it was to read this. So yeah, I recommend it as an easy read for sure. Then you have It Starts With Us, which is part 2 to It Ends With Us. And this follows the life of Atlas. So the homeless boy I told you about in the first book, this follows his life and how he reconnects with Lily and just like his backstory and things that we never learned about him from the first book. I think this was pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5. I'll give it probably like a 3.5 out of 5 because I feel like it could have been flushed out a little bit more. It was too short for me to be part 2 in my personal opinion. But everybody reading taste is different and what they look for is different in books. But I had to understand Colleen Hoover books are more easy reads, so you're not gonna get a lot of detail, you're not gonna get a lot of like intricate type of stuff. It's just gonna get straight to the point kind of thing. So for that, I did appreciate it and I thought it was a pretty decent book. So then we have Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. This is part of a series. I've not read the series because one, I couldn't find it in stores and I didn't really wanna I didn't love the book to get multiple different parts of the series to read. The book was okay, to be honest. So basically it says, at 22 years old, Sydney is enjoying a great life. She's in college, working a steady job, in love with her wonderful boyfriend, Hunter, and rooming with her best friend, Tori. But everything changes when she discovers that Hunter is cheating on her, and she's forced to decide what her next move should be. Soon, Sydney finds herself captivated by her mysterious and attractive neighbor, Ridge, and and she can't take her eyes off of him or stop listening to the passionate way he plays his guitar every evening out on his balcony. And there's something about Sydney and Ridge can't ignore either. This book was okay. I gave it like a 3 out of 5. It was pretty decent. Would I recommend it? Not really. Then we have November 9. So out of all the Colleen Hoover books I've ever read, to be really honest with you, I think November 9 was the best one because of how it was written. Basically, it follows the life of Fallon and Ben. Ben is a novelist, an aspiring novelist, and he meets Fallon in like this diner or something of that nature. And when he meets her, they don't tell each other much information about each other or anything like that, but they decided that every day on November 9th, they would meet up and kind of just hang out together and spend time together. Because around that time, Fallon was moving from where she was living in LA cross country, I think to like New York or something like that. She was moving, and they decided every year they would meet up on November 9th. They wouldn't give each other any contact information, and they would just meet at this diner every year on that date. That's kind of how it went, but it's more deeper than that, and you will see the twists and turns of what this book is about, because this book can either be a really turn off for you, or it could be like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to happen. So I would just say read the book and find out. And then last but not least, we have Ugly Love. Now, Ugly Love was an interesting book. It followed like two people called Tate Collins and Miles Archer, but it's so much drama. It's romance as well, but it's a lot of trauma in this book that happened to Miles. And then Tate is pretty much trying to like unravel that and kind of get a better understanding of who he is. But yeah, this one was a really hard one to read because it's just sad. Like, it actually made me like cry a little bit. It was actually pretty sad, but overall it was a great book and I do recommend it. Now we're gonna get into the Twisted series. Boom. This is a 4-part intersected novel. Just to get into it, these books were written by Anna Hyung, and the first one is Twisted Love. So this follows the life of Alex and Ava. So this is a grumpy sunshine trope for sure. And basically, Alex is a very like grumpy, rich guy with like a lot of baggage, but he's someone who plays a long game when it comes to a lot of things, especially revenge. And then you have Ava, who's like a ray of sunshine. She believes the best in everybody, regardless of who they are and what their past are. She believes everybody can be great in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of betrayal, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of romance, there's a lot of dark stuff. If you're into that stuff, Twisted Love is definitely the book for you. This was actually not my favorite out of the series. I think I would rate this like my 3rd favorite book out of the whole series, and I'll kind of tell you which one was my favorite when we get there. Next up, we got Twisted Games. This is the 2nd book in the series, but this one was rated a 4 out of 5 for me, and this followed the life of Bridget and Reese. So Bridget is a very posh, prissy girl. She's basically a princess. Like, she's part of a royal family. And Reese is a bodyguard. He's very much a stickler for rules. He doesn't like to cross lines or boundaries and things of that nature. And I liked it because it was like a royal kind of theme to it. I never read a book like that. And TikTok loves this book. This is like the top favorite book out of the whole series on TikTok. Everybody is a fan and a stan for Reese and Bridget. Then we have Twisted Hate. This is my favorite book out of the whole series, y'all. I love this book because of the banter. I realized after reading this book that I love banter in novels, like things that make me laugh and make me giggle. It's truly what makes a book worthwhile reading for me. And this follows the life of Jules and Josh. He's actually the only guy out of this whole series that's not rich at all. He works in the medical field. He's an adventure, adrenaline junkie, and he's super funny, super charming. And then you have Jules, who's a party animal, but she has a complex about being on her ish. Like, she really wants to be a lawyer. And then Jules is actually Ava's from the first book, one of her best friends, and Josh is Ava's brother. So you can only imagine, like, these two is like enemies to lovers. You feel me? Like, they hate each other. They hated each other throughout the whole series up until this book, I think, but they hated each other. And like, I love enemies to lovers and I love banter, so I rated this book a 5 out of 5 because my personal preference aligned with this story. Then lastly in the Twisted series, we have Twisted Lies. So this follows the life of Christian and Stella. So Christian is he's a grumpy rich guy as well. He runs a security firm, and under that security firm, guess who's under it? Reese. So they're interconnected. But yeah, he's a very interesting guy. He's not a stickler for rules. He crosses boundaries with any means necessary if it helps his bottom line and his goal. And then you have Stella. She's a content creator. She's very creative and everything like that. She wants approval from her parents, but they don't really give her that approval that she's seeking. And she's just like someone who wants to be more in life, but she's being held back by the people in her life, if that makes sense. This dynamic of this story was very interesting. Christian is weird. In this book, I didn't love this book because of how weird Christian was. Like, don't come for me, but he did some real sketchy stuff. But it was pretty good, and it gave drama and everything like that. I believe this book is like more forced proximity type of situation. This is a 4 out of 5 for me as well. But yeah, the whole series, in my opinion, 5 out of 5. I think Anna did an amazing job. And every book gradually got bigger in like pages and content, which just made it so much easier to read and so enjoyable overall. And then another series by Anna Helen that I'm currently reading is the King of Sin series. So we have King of Wrath and we have King of Pride. And then these books are actually connected to the Twisted series. Fun fact. So we finished the Twisted series. You're gonna know these characters because they kind of popped up in those books at some point. This was like a arranged, forced like kind of marriage. So there's like forced proximity, kind of enemies to lovers, drama, betrayal, all of that. They're forced to get married for a reason that I'm not gonna tell you guys. I don't want to spoil the book for you. But this book was so good. It really was a great start to the King of Sin series, and it kind of gets you to understand like every person. And all of these books always have a reason to do what they do, but you tend to fall in love with them to the end, and you kind of appreciate the happy moments in these books because they're very rare. So I love King of Wrath. It was a great book. Then last up, this is actually recently was released, which is King of Pride. It follows the life of Kai and Isabella. So Kai is a heir of the Young Corporation. He is being offered a CEO position of that company, but he can't mess up. Like throughout all the months of the vote that's supposed to determine whether he becomes CEO or not, he cannot mess up at all. But then here comes along Isabella, who's an aspiring novelist, but she currently works as a bartender at what's called the Van Halla Club. And every one of these books, all the men in these books, except for Josh in the Twisted series, have memberships to this club. It's only for the richest people in the high society, and they only invite 100 people to this club for membership, and Kai happened to be one. And that's basically how they meet. But to Kai, Isabella's like a distraction that can potentially cost him the CEO vote. And to Isabella, Kai is like too much like people that she dated in the past, and she doesn't want to get involved with him again. So it's more like a forbidden love, forbidden romance, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I think I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 because I feel like it was a lot of filler in this book, and it could have been more detailed, more fleshed out a little bit more. But there's another book coming out, and it's supposed to follow the life of Dominic. It's another person within the series. I hope that book is fleshed out more. I have great expectations for that one. But yeah, I think that book's called King of Greed. So I'm looking forward to that one. But I think this book was good overall. It was a good read. And this is one of the first books I read in May, actually. So shout out to King of Pride. So we're right at the home stretch of some singular standalone books that I read in 2022 through 2023. First up, we got Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This was a really good book. This is my first time ever reading a second chance romance trope kind of book, and I was really impressed. So it follows two characters, Saya and Yasmin. They were in a relationship, they were in a marriage, and a lot of different complications and obstacles happened during their marriage, which actually forced them to get separated and ultimately divorced. But they still own businesses together. They have children together, so they see each other all the time. And it's kind of just letting go of those feelings, kind of trying to move on with their life. But it's hard because they're so connected in different ways outside of just being in a relationship. And it kind of follows how they work through those issues. It makes you feel like you're a part of them and you want them to be together so bad as a reader. It kind of shows you like the whole holistic view of how a relationship of two people can affect so many people, or how like outside influences or outside issues or just trauma can affect the relationship, and how even though all those things happen, it's still possible to come back together and love each other even stronger despite all the obstacles you went through. It was a beautiful story. I love Before I Let Go, and this really introduced me to Kennedy Ryan, and it's a Black author, and I support my Black people, especially my Black sisters. and that's on period. Next up, we have Archer's Voice. This story was so, I don't even want to hear any criticism about Archer's Voice. Literally, if anybody says anything to me, it goes through one ear and out the other. I don't listen, bro. Archer's Voice was so adorable. I was a character named Archer and Bree in a small town. Archer had went through a lot of things growing up. He was in a household where domestic violence was present and things of that nature, and he went through a lot of traumatic things in his childhood, and one of those traumatic things actually ended up making him hearing impaired. As an adult, naturally, he separated himself from everybody in the town. He's kind of one of those people that people in the town don't engage with because they don't know how to speak to him, so they don't talk to him. But Bree comes to town. She's an outsider. She comes to town, and she decides she wants to engage with Archer. She wants to talk to him. She wants to be his friend. She wants to just be around him, and their relationship flourishes from that. Of course, there's a lot of obstacles, a lot of problems and things of that nature, but I love small town romances, like I told y'all before, and this was like the icing on the cake for me. And last but not least, we have 1% of You. This was a Grumpy Sunshine book as well. It followed two people. It followed Elijah and Lucy. Elijah was a tattoo artist who owns a house in the neighborhood, and Lucy is a mother, and she rents an apartment near his home, and they kind of like have encounters with each other. It's kind of one of those single mother meets a guy. He's grumpy, she's like full of life kind of situation, and how their relationship sparks from there. That's kind of how it goes. But it was a really decent book. I think I rated this a 4 out of 5. It was one of those easy reads, so I would really recommend that book. Thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and put your post notifications on. I'm planning on doing more videos like this because I have so many books that I'm looking forward to reading, and so many different book videos that I want to come out with. But I thought this was probably the first one that I should put out, given that there's so many books I read that I never talked about with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, definitely comment down below and let me know of any book idea videos that you think I should do moving forward. But with that being said, later everybody.